Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everybody, and welcome inside another edition of our Little Yankees podcast, episode 31. And let's be quite frank, E-Ray and Josh, my two partners in crime here, we're going to break down everything that the Yankees have. What better way to get geared up for this episode of the podcast where the Yankees absolutely laid an egg against Boston this weekend than by watching them not get a hit in the first inning of their game today, the day we record this podcast, against the LA Angels of Anaheim. Boys, I bring you on. What's up? Let's talk Yanks.
Oh man, it was a great weekend, so much fun baseball to watch. Yeah, man, just love this team. I love watching them play.
Yeah, I love them so much that I actually have them on right now on my TV. So I do not have them on my TV. You guys are going to be because I don't want to put them on my TV because they're a disgrace to humanity and a disgrace to all Yankee fans and a disgrace to everyone involved. So that's how I'm doing. Hope everyone at home is doing well.
I think that your feelings, E-Ray, are well reciprocated by probably everybody in Yankee land. This time last week when Josh and I recorded, we actually went into the week saying to ourselves, like, damn, this could be an awesome week, an opportunity to have a little bit of moving day. Big series against the Royals that you come away with a series win and then going to Boston, you could find yourself in first place. Mm-hmm. And not only was the series against the Royals, which we're not going to dive into because it was so long ago at this point, not only was that series kind of a up and down, especially in those first two games where you'd lose it by blowing the lead and then you almost lose it again by blowing the lead, but the confidence wasn't there. And then you go into Boston. So without further ado, I'm going to break down what happened in the three games, and then we're going to get into it because this is where it boils down to it. And I feel like in so many of the pods this year, guys, where we've shit on the Yankees, we usually just get right into it and we shit on them. So rather than just destroying them off the bat, let's look at why they deserve to get crapped on. And it starts with the fact that they went into this series against Boston with an opportunity to control their own destiny and put themselves within striking distance of first place in the AL East. And in the first game, they immediately give up the lead because, as we know, starting pitching, especially in the first couple of innings, has been an impossibly bad issue. Then they come back, and when they have the opportunity to take the momentum in game one, a base running blunder, Gio Urshela gets sent in a mind-boggling way. No outs. Guy has a cannon in right field. They sent him anyway. And from that point on, you never really had to worry about the game because the Yankees never made it competitive. Obviously, Adam Ottavino dominated them in this game. And that was sort of the theme of the first two games of the series. Game number two, Yankees hang around 4-0 for a majority of it. They load the bases a few times. They have a crap ton of walks, as they always seem to, but Boston isn't afraid of them at all. They pitch right at their big hitters. And Adam Ottavino, even though he struggles in the eighth and a little bit in the ninth inning, gets out of it again, continues to make the Yankees look like clowns for trading him to their division rival. And they wind up losing that game. And then what could you say other than an absolute laugher and disgrace on Sunday where you're looking to avoid a sweep? Garrett Coley's an absolute dud in the first inning. They're down 4-0. They get the ever-living snot kicked out of them in the game. 9-2 your final. Swept away by Boston. Pathetic showing. And for all intents and purposes, the Yankees now find themselves in the exact same spot that they kind of were 2 weeks ago when we shit all over them and said that they really needed a miracle to get them back in the division race.
Yeah. I don't know. I guess, we can kind of stop thinking that that's going to happen, that miracle is coming. Because bottom line, the way this team is right now, barring any major trade, they're not good enough to compete in the division and potentially not even in a wild card race. I mean, at this point, they are among a lot of teams that are sort of kind of in the mix for the second wild card spot, but not necessarily in close grasp of it. So yeah, I mean, it's just an awful weekend that kind of sadly reaffirmed everything we sort of felt about the team. I mean, I think we were obviously negative in our view because how could we not be? But then, last week they played well in the Oakland series. Um, the Kansas City series was ugly, but they won it. And that's really all you can ask for at the end of the day, right? And then we're thinking, okay, we'll give them an honest chance to let them prove to us what they are in Boston. And they did. They proved to us what they are. And that is unfortunately a mediocre baseball team. That's what they've been all year. That's what they will continue to be unless something drastic changes, because we can't sit here and say, well, if this goes this way and this turns around, then everything's going to work out. We're basically halfway through the season at this point, and you got to stop just thinking that something is going to click. There is no switch. There's no on switch. That's part of the problem that the Yankees have had being in cruise control for the last couple of years. When you're in cruise control for a long time, it gets hard to flip the switch. And now the switch is dead. The switch is gone. There is no switch.
But what's worse than that, and this plays off the point, is you expect if nothing's going to change that Brian Cashman would do something to change it. But this is something you and I have talked about on the podcast. E-Ray talked about on the podcast. A few weeks ago, I brought up, why won't they do something on a Monday off day, fire somebody, go out there and do something? But you can just tell that that's just not the way that the Yankees are going to operate this season. They can't make a trade for anybody because they don't have the prospects. They can't, bring somebody up because their minor leagues are barren of talent. There are some guys whose names have been thrown around there, whether it's Troy Ambergy or, the kid who they're trying out as shortstop in left field. Park. So there are guys down there, but like those aren't the answers, and they're not going to fire Boone midseason. So it's a damned if you do, damned if you don't. You're not going to fire this guy who is an awful manager, but you're also not going to change anything. And if you don't change anything, they're going to suck because this team sucks, or they're at the minimum just going to be a 500 baseball team.
This is, I think I told you guys, and I think I tweeted it. Like, what I want now is I really don't want anyone to go to these games. Like, I want them to pay for what we have to what we're dealing with right now. I don't want people to watch. That's why I'm not watching right now. Of course, I'm going to eventually turn the game on because I am an addict and I'm a loser like the Yankees, but it's just so frustrating, man. This
sucker for punishment too.
Yeah, there we go. Yeah, that too. I love doing that. But they're just like this weekend, they tease us, and I think we weren't going to let them. They won the last couple of weeks. They beat the Central teams, whatever. They've been doing that, but you got to win against the division. And not only did they lose against this division, it's just humiliating.
Yeah.
You got a squad there, by the way, who were last year, awful. They get a manager, Alex Cora. I think, again, I also feel like a broken record because we keep talking about this, but it's just hand in hand. I think Lindsay Adler wrote an article too, where you just look at both these squads and you compare them. The Red Sox are fun. The Red Sox are stealing bases. The Red Sox are taking advantages of runners in scoring position. They're doing everything that we want the Yankees to do. And it's just it's humiliating and it's pathetic. And it's like you guys said, something needs to change. 3 weeks ago, I was asking for Brian Cashman to fix this problem, and I'm here today. And I told you guys this yesterday. We talked about maybe, is it time for a change? Because we said it starts from the top, right? It's an organization philosophy, and it's failing. Whether it starts from Hal Steinbrenner to Brian Cashman, when it comes to roster construction, because right now this core doesn't have it, and it's going to continue to be like this. These players out here every game, it's just the mentality is not there. And is Brian Cashman the guy to fix this problem? I'm leaning no now. And I was on still the Cashman train 3 weeks ago, but now you start to wonder. Granted, Brian, we love you. We're always going to love you. The Yankees have been a winning team for the last 20 years. Yeah, we have they've still, won World Series, whatever, but we've still been winning. You know what I mean? It's still a product out there where every season they're in October, but this year is finally, and last year, again, they made the playoffs because they increased the playoff round spots. We had 8 spots, so that's why the only reason we made it. So I don't know, man. It's just this team is just they're so cocky and they're so arrogant. And now it's they keep saying that. I feel like they go out there and it's like, oh, it's gonna come to us. It's gonna come to us. No, it's not. It's almost July now, and this team they are who they are. We are who they thought they were, and it's awful. And I just it's draining and it's this exhausting, and it's really just exhausting. I just don't. Every week we come out here with the same bullshit, and it's
What's the expression? Isn't it like the inmates are running the prison or
Inmates
something?
running the asylum.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's what it is. Because essentially, what the Yankees have done is way back when they installed Aaron Boone and built up this personality of players first, made it so that if this team was not built with players who were able to buy in and perform to their expectation, there would be no correction for them. And that is what we are seeing now. I don't know if you guys saw Gleyber Torres' quotes after the game the other day, but it was like when they asked him, it's like, are you guys like worried? Do you have a sense of urgency? He was like, no, we know we have
I
time.
think that was missed.
Jump in there.
Yeah.
He misunderstood the question, and he doesn't use a translator when he speaks to the media. And all the beat reporters followed up on that tweet saying, you know, this is uncalled for. This isn't fair, because he didn't understand the question, and he answered it in a way that made it sound like it was the typical like Yankee BS, but it really was that he just didn't really know what the reporters were asking. So I take that and I throw it to the side.
All right.
But that doesn't make your point any less true, because we've heard this same sort of stuff in the past from other players. That
No, and I agree. And you know what? I'll take the blame for that, and in the respect of saying like, all right, so I misspoke in regards to it, but I think my generalized point on it in general is, if there is complacency among these guys, and it seems like there's complacency not only among, you know, management and the players and the front office, then there's really going to be no way to get yourself out of it. And then something that was interestingly brought up was how none of these players get sent down or have any accountability for their actions. You know, the fact is, it's like, look at Rougned Odor. Stinks for a long time, but because he's free and because the Yankees need a left-handed bat there and somebody who can play these positions, they're not just going to cut ties for somebody to be able to do it. Gleyber's a big-time part of this lineup. They're not going to send a guy down even if he has options. The same thing goes for Clint. So rather than make the organization and a winning brand of baseball and the idea that like you need to go out there and do your job, and if you don't perform, then somebody else will take your position, they almost have it that, you know, the players know that their jobs are safe and that they don't really have to worry about it. And even if they are busting their asses out there to try and do it right, there's an unlimited margin for error, because eventually the Yankees aren't going to make the moves because they are so pro nurturing and developing these players when they have a World Series window they have to go on.
Well, I think Ire said a good word before. He said arrogance. And like, I do think there is complacency, but I also believe that there's a high level of arrogance within the organization. And like, I get it, because pretty much whatever they do has worked, maybe not necessarily to get us the championship, but to get to the playoffs year in and year out and compete and be one of the best teams in baseball, win more games than any team in baseball over the last however many years, decade or whatever. But this level of arrogance has come back to bite them. And I think that goes into a lot of the issues at hand, because I think, you know, there's the sense that, well, it's the Yankees, so it's going to work out. And of course, you know, the Yankees will make the playoffs. And of course, when they get to the playoffs, it's all going to fall into place. And I felt it last year a lot, because that team was piss poor all year. And they'd carried themselves as if they were a team that, you know, had won 45 out of the 60 games last year, when they barely just luckily happened to fall into a playoff spot. And I feel like that's carried over. And you talked about, Jules, like, Rougned Odor being on the team is embarrassing. Gleyber Torres, that whole situation is something that I just can't wrap my head around. And I feel in a previous era, he would have been sent down to prove a point, and for him to go and work on whatever the issues are in AAA. But we're in an era now where that just doesn't happen. At least in this organization, it doesn't happen, and that's because they have pushed from the top down this idea that like it's all going to work out. You can tell from the way that Cashman speaks to the media when he does, and Boone, the way he talks to the media every day, and it trickles down into the players too. Like, it's just, there's a high level of arrogance. Adam Ottavino, when that trade happened, we were all happy about it because we didn't like him anymore. And the Yankees, it didn't work because they couldn't find a way to use him correctly. And then they salary dumped him to the Red Sox. And we said at the time, despite the fact that we were okay with him being gone from the team, we said at the time, he's going to at some point face our heavily right-handed part of the order and sit them all down. And he's done it this year. And the level of arrogance that you have to look past all of what could go wrong with that and send him to a division rival and attach a prospect to it, like, it's just unbelievably,
and not just a division rival, the Red Sox
division rival. And that type of move. Now, I'm saying this with hindsight because at the time I didn't call it out this way, and I'll admit that I was wrong about it. But to look back at it in hindsight and say, like, of course this didn't work because this is just not smart business. And there's a lot of moves that are made throughout the organization that it's a similar level of arrogance displayed where it's just, well, I'm Brian Cashman, we're the Yankees, and this will work because we said so. And like, it's, I don't know, man. It's come back and bit them in the ass. I mean, it's not biting them. It already happened. And we're kind of now just sort of watching it unfold in real time.
And again, I was wrong as well. I'll say it because I wanted him gone too, and I was like, whatever. But the problem is that I guess we didn't think the Red Sox were going to be this good, and we didn't think that they were going to be in first place. I mean, we made jokes, like you said. We made jabs that, Ottavino's going to shut down our righty lineup. But yeah, man, he's turning around over there. He struggled early on, but he's got it going. And my question always comes to this: it's like, why has he gotten it going over there? What's going on? What happened here? Yeah, Ottavino was good the first year, but then something happens. He was trash here. And it comes to mind again to, development of these players. Why are these players regressing? Why?
It's the coaching and the management.
Why can't we get the big hit with runners in scoring position? It's like all these things. It's like, what is going on? And it's a really a top to the bottom thing, man. It's like, I think David Cohn and Paul O'Neill were talking about analytics, right? Was it yesterday? A thing yesterday. And it's like, analytics work. We've seen it work, but other teams it works for, but why can't it work here? Yeah, the Yankees have a $200 million payroll. They probably have the most expensive analytic team, but what's going on here when it's like
their manager fucking sucks? That's what it is.
But even but the manager sucks, but he's just a puppet. It goes beyond the manager. Yeah, the manager I would say the manager is not, Aaron Boone is not the problem. He's part of the problem.
He's a symptom. He's a symptom.
Yeah, it's a
the virus is Brian Cashman.
Yeah, and it's like the philosophy. What is the Yankees' philosophy in regards to analytics isn't working. Their approach isn't working. To be honest, it's a fucking failure. That's what it is, right?
For me,
it's a failure. We're seeing a failure put out there every night when it comes to these players. They're failing us every night, and they failed us from top to bottom. Whether it's hell not wanting, we're in hell. How not wanting to go over the luxury tax for players that you actually need, and Brian Cashman actually spending $200 million on this player group, on this group of players where it's not working out. Whether it comes to the manager being an asshole, I'm just kidding. Brian, he's probably a nice guy, but Boone's not the guy. It's all that, man. It's all that.
I mean, for me, I want to address two things. First things first is on the analytics approach, or whether or not analytics works. I think the proof is in the pudding that if you have a good manager, the analytics work flawlessly. Because think of how many games the Yankees have lost this year because of bad base running, bad defense, and just boneheaded managerial decisions. That's not on the analytics.
Yeah.
But Phil Nevin sending a guy who easily could have scored that game and given the Yankees a lead
It's bad
that,
process.
it's like that stuff comes down to who is coaching these players, who is telling them in game what to do. And look, we can all believe that the management is in Boone's ear, or like, the joke that like when he used to go up there and speak, it was really Brian Cashman feeding him the answers. But at the end of the day, it comes down to what we've discussed, which is this is a guy who came into this job, who Brian Cashman hired and staked the position with because he was good at the interview. Because he came there and fed the Yankees whatever he fed them, in the same way that Jets fans joke that Adam Gase nailed the interview and got, Peyton Manning a cup of coffee one day. It's the same sort of thing. He didn't manage or bench coach like Alex Cora or AJ Hinch. He wasn't a longtime minor league manager like Kevin Cash. He didn't do these jobs to be able to go out there and put himself in a position in which he understood the flow of the game. And it's been relevant in every single opportunity he has shown himself when it matters. Showed himself in the Red Sox series back in 2018 when he went head-to-head against Cora. Showed in every series he's managed against AJ Hinch. Kevin Cash has absolutely med Aaron Boone his bitch over the amount of times that they've been here. And that proves, it shows. As good as an analytical team as Brian Cashman had, it's like, look how good they were with the analytics when you had Joe Girardi here. Because when push came to shove, it's not about Girardi being the manager or not, but it's like when push came to shove, you knew that they were going to run the bases well, that they were going to make sure that even if the analytics was a little bit muddy here and there, a guy like Girardi who had been around the block, who had won manager of the year with the Marlins, who would manage his ass off as the Yankees, was going to put the right guys on defense, was going to know when to push the right buttons in the bullpen. So it's like those are the things that are losing them the games in addition to the analytics. And if the analytics works, then it's going to be counteracted by how bad they are with their fundamentals.
I think a lot is made of the analytics. Like people use that word to just describe like things that aren't even analytics. Like I think it's a separate discussion about that. I think you can say that whatever the numbers that they're running or the decisions that they're making, they don't work out. We know that. And I don't know that that's necessarily analytics. I think that sometimes, like just as an example, Mike Ford being kept around, that is an analytical thing, I think, because they saw things in his raw numbers, in the minor leagues that made them believe that it would translate at the major league level. For them, it did not. And something like keeping Rougned Odor on the roster, that's not analytics. That's a decision being made even above Cashman's head. The decision to hire a manager who had no previous experience coaching, managing in a front office role of any sort, that's not an analytical decision. That's the general manager putting basically his neck on the line for a guy who you could question whether he had earned the job or not. I mean, he earned the job because he got it, but the point is that's not an analytical decision. These hitters' inability to get a hit with runners in scoring position or with the bases loaded or with a guy on second or third and 2 outs, that's not analytics. That's something completely different. And all of this kind of goes together because it does really stem from the top. And the financial stuff, I can't blame on Cashman because ultimately his boss is telling him what to do in that regard. But the other stuff you can blame on him because the decision to hire the manager and then the coaches that come with it, right? That's on Cashman. The roster construction, that's on Cashman. And the decision to abandon the left-handed power thing and not worry about the lineup balance, that's Cashman. And there's a lot of stuff that you can put on his doorstep that it's on him. And ultimately, I agree with E-Ray, right? Boone definitely, I don't believe helps, but he is not the problem. The problem is the person who's responsible for all of these things coming together, right? If your dinner sucks, if your food sucks, you're not going to blame the waiter, the one who brings it to you and presents it to you. You're going to blame the guy who cooked it. And ultimately, that's what we're dealing with here. It's a spoiled it's a spoiled meal that looked good on the menu, but tastes like crap.
Wow.
Look,
And
I like that.
and that's we have to blame the chef.
Yeah.
I agree. But I'm going to take it a step further because I think it's about time to. And we've talked Brian Cashman. We've talked Aaron Boone. We've talked the players. It's time to talk fucking Hal Steinbrenner.
Yeah.
It's
Thank
time to fucking talk Hal Steinbrenner because it is due time to start putting this guy in the category of worst owners in New York City. And I have no problem saying it because the fact is, it's like,
wow, that's big.
He is name only. He didn't win those World Series. His dad did. His dad bought the team in the 70s. His dad built those teams with Reggie Jackson and all the Bronx's burning Bronx suit guys in the 70s. His dad was the guy who came back from being reneged with baseball, who hired Stick Michael to build those teams in the 90s, who put his name on it. Steinbrenner, that's not Hal. It's not R.I.P. Hank. It's not their sister. It's George. He's the Steinbrenner. He's the guy who has the name recognition. So Hal's been running with that for far too long for my liking. He wants to worry about the luxury tax. He wants to worry about being a businessman. Bro, your business is the New York Yankees. Your business does good when they win. So you can go out there down the line and talk about who the worst owners are in New York. You can say Dolan. You can say the Johnsons. If you hate the Maras, you could say the Maras. You could have said the Wilpons when he was there. Maybe he hasn't given the Yankees money to a Ponzi scheme like they did, but he sure as shit is keeping it all for himself when the fact is the Yankees succeeded when they would go out there and do that. And now, after losing to your arch rival, where the decisions your team made were the reason pretty much directly responsible for you getting swept and starting 0-6, it's not even a peep. You heard nothing from the ownership group today. You heard nothing from the people who stamped their name next to the New York Yankees, who have a mural of the guy who used to own them in the outfield that makes him look like he played for the team. And I think the bill comes due. It's about time that Hal Steinbrenner sticks his name on this, that comes out and answers the questions of the media like Cashman had to, like Aaron Boone has to every day, like the players have to every afternoon and every evening, because you're the guy who owns the franchise. You're the guy who pays their checks, and you're the guy who right now is directly responsible for the reason why they have to keep a guy like Odor on the roster because he's free, why they had to trade away a guy like Adam Ottavino rather than finding a way to work for him because he cost $9 million and you weren't going over the luxury tax. You're the reason why they didn't sign Tanaka and now have Cole and a bunch of 4 starters. And you're the reason why they didn't go out there and sign anybody this offseason. So if you're going to be Steinbrenner, if you're going to be the heir apparent to your dad, then start acting like it and start putting yourself out there. Because I know, as much as I hate the cliche that is, if George were alive, they'd be turned over the grave. And I had to hear my fucking dad call me this weekend and say, if Steinbrenner was here, Boone would have been fired. And I was like, yeah, thanks, Dad. Whatever. He's not. He's dead. R.I.P. But, I'm sick and tired of that. So put your name on it. Because like I said, if George was alive, and I hate that, losing to the Red Sox and losing to the Rays. Those were the 2 things you hear on the Yes Network all the time he hated. Yankees do it with ease, losing to those teams now. Put your name on it. Get accountable.
Yeah, I mean, we've spoken about that issue a lot this year about the lack of accountability, and it would be nice if he would speak. I mean, I don't know.
He's the top.
I mean, we already heard from Cashman, and obviously, like, we hear from Boone every day. We haven't heard from the owner, and I just don't know. Listen, like, it's something that he should do because ultimately, like, he's the one responsible. He's the one who, has to approve every decision and make every decision. But it's not going to, like, I'm not going to feel satisfied just to hear him talk, but it is something that you're right that he needs to put his name on. And I do have an issue with that because, like, while it won't solve the problems and it won't make me feel better about the season, it will show me that that yes, like what is happening does have an effect and it does matter. And this is something that needs to be addressed because the longer it goes on, the more it seems that they have become accepting of the garbage. And like, I think a lot of fans kind of already feel that they are accepting of it. I don't know that I would go that far necessarily, but I think that they unnecessarily hamstring themselves, like not spending over the luxury tax. Like you want to tell me COVID, blame it on COVID. I can't really argue with that. And I don't have the book, so I can't see the numbers. And I understand that not having fans in the stands all season plays a big part in it. And only playing 60 games is another factor. But like at the same time, like I go to games. I know how much tickets cost. I know how much the concessions cost. I buy a lot of Yankees merchandise. I have a whole drawer in this room that's full of Yankee t-shirts. Like I know how much this stuff costs. And I know that I'm not the only person that does that. And the revenue in the sport in general has gone up exponentially over the last bunch of years. And the payroll for the Yankees has stayed pretty steady. And they actually cut payroll from what it was in 2020. So like, there's no reason to do that when you're the Yankees. When you're a $5 billion franchise, you don't have to impose a budget on yourself or act like the luxury tax is a salary cap, because it's not. And I understand that you look at the Rays and you say, well, they spend less than whatever it is, $60 million a year on payroll. Why do we need to spend 240, 250? Like, I do understand that logic, but ultimately, if the team you've put together for the $208 million isn't good enough to win the World Series, then that means you probably need to spend more to make it better, or you need to re-examine the entire thing. And I think now at this point, we have to re-examine the entire thing, because you want to talk about, I can't go exceed the luxury tax because one, the penalties are hefty in terms of money, but also we lose our international draft slots. We lose money there and we lose draft picks and all this. And like, okay, fine. But are we killing it on the player development side? No, because if we were, we wouldn't be sitting watching this product that we're watching, because there would be guys in the minors who could come up and actually make a difference. And the fact that we have guys like Trey Ambergi and Hoy-Jun Park, who we talked about before, in the minors, who are killing it in AAA, the fact that we can't get them in the majors means one of two things. Either one, the team doesn't believe that they're good enough to come up here, or two, they don't want to pay the raises that they'll get in salary for getting called up to the major leagues. So either way, that's a bad thing. That means the player development isn't working, and the organization doesn't want to foot the bill. Okay, so that's an issue, and that's my problem with Hal Steinbrenner. Speak to the media, yes, because that's the right thing to do, and that's how you hold yourself accountable to the job that you have. But also at the same time, re-examine the entire process, because as I've said 7,000 times, you could tattoo this on me at this point. It's not working.
You want to hear a good conspiracy theory? My mom watched a Yankee game with me earlier in the year when they got swept by the Braves, and she was half asleep, so it was more like her drunk, sleepy ramblings after she had had a glass of white wine with dinner. You know, she's 70 years old, so it's like for her, she can do what she wants. She's awesome. But she said to me, maybe Hal Steinbrenner is jealous about how much George loved the Yankees. So now all he really wants to do is screw over the thing that his dad loved more than him and make the fans hate him.
That's quite the conspiracy.
Make the fans hate the team, because he knows he's going to make money from it, and there'll always be the Yankees, and
but
they'll
is he
value
though?
the shit. I mean, you know, they're still the most valuable sports franchise in the U.S.
But if I'm saying, like, the only way to both of you,
that was her conspiracy theory, by the way. So I don't endorse it, but you know, those are my mom's sleepy ramblings.
I feel like the only way we're going to see if Hal really cares is how bad the season gets. If the season gets really bad and they miss the playoffs and they're in third and fourth and nothing changes, like Aaron Boone, I can't imagine a world if they miss the playoffs and they're in third or fourth place that Aaron Boone comes back. If he does, we're going to have a lot of angry podcast episodes.
Oh, yeah.
I'm going to protest outside Yankee Stadium. But back to what Josh was saying about player development. I saw this on NewJersey.com article the other day. I don't know if you guys saw it. But they were blasting the Yankees' handling of Deivi Garcia. You remember him? Game 2.
Oh, yeah, I forgot about that guy.
One inning, right? Was it 1 or 2? I forget. I think it was 1. Anyway, NL Scout said this about Deivi Garcia. Deivi Garcia has gone so far backwards that it's sad to watch. The Yankees changed the delivery, and they're trying to teach him this flat sweeping slider that's not effective. He had a plus curveball that he's not throwing it as much. Honestly, I don't know what the Yankees are doing. Right there.
That's the arrogance.
That's the right there. Yeah. The arrogance of like, we're smarter than anyone else. We're the Yankees. We have a great like analytics, whatever, the department of player development program. There we go. Player development. That's the word. But yeah, it's like we can make these guys better. Things are working, but we can make them better. Think about all the players that they have screwed, guys. Just think about it. And we talked about every other team having exciting young players coming up. We had that a few years ago, but now we have none.
And they screwed the pooch.
It's like what Josh was saying. We have to examine the whole overall philosophy of this organization because it's not working. Why are these players regressing? Why is Gleyber Torres as bad as he is? I went to the gym. Yeah, I went to the gym today, and I saw a guy, a kid with his dad, I guess, playing shortstop and hitting the ball. In my head, I was like, I'd rather have that guy than Gleyber out the plate. I really did because Gleyber Torres has been just so bad, and we want to love him. He's our Gleyber. We like to see him when he smiles. But right now, he's sad. I'm sad. We're all sad. It's just like, what's going on here? It's like something has to change. But at the same time, it's like, I don't know if Brian Cashman should be the guy to change it. It's a whole thing.
I think that plays into what Josh was saying and something I proposed to Josh and you earlier today when we were discussing, and I think this makes a lot of sense, is at the end of the year, you're going to get to a crossroads. If the Yankees don't make the playoffs, and the fact is right now it looks like they're not gonna, and if they do, it will be an early exit, the only choice is one of two things. If you are keeping Brian Cashman, then you need to open up your purse. That's what it is. You need to spend money, and you have to say, who gives a shit about the luxury tax and who gives a shit about international prospects and all this stuff that we think makes us good? We have to go back to what actually made the Yankees good, which was dropping $300 million and having Yankee haters say that we buy championships. That's the shit that you have to bring back.
They also
or if you want to be the Rays, then it's bye-bye Brian Cashman. And Hal Steinbrenner has to go out there and steal one of these guys from Tampa who know how to manage a player development system and trade for prospects and put together a farm with $28 million as your payroll. Because something has to give in between that. Those are the only two options. You could find a way where you could get the Rays guy and give him a $300 million payroll, but they're not going to be the Dodgers. We want them to be the Dodgers, but they're not going to. So rather than do that, they have to model themselves with how the Red Sox are doing it. And it sucks to say, but they can be the Red Sox because they can be under the luxury tax and build up their farm system by getting a guy who knows how to build a team on limited resources and a limited payroll. Maybe that guy is Theo Epstein. Maybe. But if it isn't, maybe it should be one of these guys who work in the front office down in Tampa. Because if you want to be the Rays so bad, then stop making Brian Cashman try and do it. Go get somebody from Tampa. That's all you can really ask for.
I agree with you. Sorry, I'm getting attacked here.
There he is.
I agree with you. I think that it's true. Like, one thing that we know with Cashman throughout this entire time he's been here is that they have not really done well in the draft or maybe necessarily in the international signing area. And
I have no faith in Jason Dominguez now, by the way.
I was just going to ask that.
Great. His trades haven't always been great. And so that means generally what he hits it out of the park on is the free agent signings and maybe the offensive trades, not the pitching trades. So yeah, if you're going to keep him, then I agree. Like, you have to spend money and paper over the mistakes or errors with the money that you have, because that ultimately is the Yankees' biggest strength, is the amount of money they have. It's not the player development. It's not, any of that stuff. It's the dollars. So yeah, like, it's one or the other, in my opinion. Like, if you want to go the analytical route and you want to cut payroll and try to figure out different ways to build a team that necessarily aren't the Yankee way, then it's time to find somebody different, because it's not working. And I think it's sort of been like a little bit of both. They've tried to do a little bit of both. Like, they cut payroll in 2021, but last offseason they gave out the most expensive contract to a pitcher ever. So it's like, well, what are we doing? Like, what is our identity? What kind of franchise do we want to be? And they have to make the decision on what that is, and then they have to make sure that they have the right people in place to carry out the vision. And it's fair to question Cashman because ultimately, what got us here is the decision to basically shift all the power to Cashman. And I'm not saying that that was necessarily the wrong choice to make because I get why the Yankees did it, but that is why we're here because all the decisions come from him, right? So, yeah, I mean, it's the whole thing. It's the whole, like I said before, it's the whole thing from the top.
Again, and listen, we're talking strictly about the New York Yankees and Brian Cashman. Yes, because I'm just hearing like other people, what they usually do. It's like, dude, Brian Cashman, he's been great. Like, again, the Yankees have had a winning. Yes, we know that. And that's been, we appreciate what Brian Cashman has done. But the thing is, again, we're the New York Yankees. The expectations are not to be a winning team to make the playoffs. It's to win the World Series every year. And this year is where we're really, and again, last year, but right now, like, guys, we're tied with the fucking Seattle Mariners.
Who haven't made the playoffs in 20 years.
Yes. Like, that's a problem. Their division record, their record against the AL East is, even against the Baltimore Orioles, what are they, 6-4? Like, that's a problem. It's just, like, why does your $208 million payroll suck so bad? Have we invested so much into the wrong players? Is this just, Drew's going to like this reference, is this just a bad batch of players that we have on this team?
At least they knew how to do their job. They're specialized in what they need to do. Nobody on the Yankees is that.
But I'll say this though, it's like, but we've seen these players that come here go to other teams and all of a sudden succeed. So is it the player issue, or is, again, I think we've talked about the last few weeks, or is it the philosophy of the organization?
I think at this point,
you think it's the player?
No, at this point, it's the organization's philosophy. Yeah. And it comes down to what you just said about Debbie Garcia with them trying to change him in the minors. And that's why Gary, I think more than anything, I would be completely on board at this point in my New York Yankees fanhood and with the way that this season looks, moving on from everybody within the organization. Obviously, you're not moving on from Hal. If they had an ownership bidding, that would be the best thing ever because everybody and their mother would want to own the New York Yankees. But they're not going to get that. The Steinbrenners are owning them from now until the end of time. So everybody else within the organization, I'm fine with getting rid of. I'm fine with getting rid of Cashman and changing the analytics approach to how things go. I'm absolutely fine with getting rid of Aaron Boone and the entire coaching staff and looking for somebody who fits what the organization is going to preach and being able to do that. And I'm fine with getting rid of some of the players who might not fit anymore, whether that's trading guys who have higher ceilings or just cutting ties with guys who really we don't think are that good, like Odor, who actually has years on his contract. And right now, with the way that Brian Cashman runs this team and the way that Hal runs this team and Boone runs this team, you probably will see him again next year if they continue to be here because he's free and because they can plug him out there and he doesn't cost them anything and he is a lefty bat. And right now, the priority of being anti-lefty is just as associated with the approach of Brian Cashman and this team and their arrogance and the way that they go about things. So
that's another thing.
Yeah, I was going to say, go ahead, Ereg.
No, that's another thing right there. It's like, again, you have a heavy right-handed lineup with these guys. And are you that cocky and arrogant that you don't think that your division rivals or other teams with their scouting department, their teams, like, that they won't expose this weakness and shut you down every damn game? Because it's happening. You know what I mean? It's like,
yeah.
You don't think Chaim Bloom said when they said to him, "Oh, we'll give you Adam Ottavino," he was like, a guy who can strike out your entire lineup because he dominates righties?
And you're going to
we'll definitely take him for a prospect.
No, they gave the prospect to the Red Sox to take him.
Yeah, that's what I mean. We'll take him as a prospect.
Off the phone probably. But yeah, I was going to say the same thing. It's like, I that is actually an analytical thing because we've heard them talk about how I actually think Mark Teixeira kind of broke them because when the shift became a thing and his batting average, he went from like a 290 hitter to a 250 hitter. I think the analytics of that whole thing of the shift has really taken a good chunk of base hits away from left-handed hitters, and the Yankees experienced it firsthand with a guy that they were paying a ton of money to. I think that may have broken them, and it's like kind of funny to say it, but I don't know how else to do it. And I think the numbers back it up, and that's why they have gone away from the left-handed hitter. So like in a vacuum, it makes sense, right? Like maybe you prefer to have 6 right-handed hitters and 3 left-handed hitters, right? But
or a couple switches.
Right? Like that's another Yankee trademark, a switch hitter. But and they have decided to go so right-handed that it's not in a vacuum, because obviously the game isn't played there. So yeah, like it makes sense. It makes sense to say to yourself, okay, well, a right-handed hitter is more adept at not hitting into the teeth of a defensive shift. But also at the same time, like Ira said, the other teams are going to expose the weakness. They are going to bring power righty after power righty after power righty out of their bullpen and strike you out and get you out. And you've become a one-dimensional team because of that analytical philosophy that says right-handed hitter is greater than left-handed hitter because of the infield shift. And so yes, like that is another thing that you can chalk up to analytics, the overarching topic of baseball. That is a decision that they made based off numbers that has not worked out, because they didn't account for the fact that it would be countered by their opponents. They thought to themselves, we'll just put together a lineup full of these big, strong right-handed hitters who are going to hit home runs, and it's going to work out because we're going to just power you out of the ballpark. We're going to forget about any other trait that it takes to be a professional baseball player: athleticism, speed, any of that sort of stuff. Defense. Out the window, because we believe at the end of the day, our power will win any battle against any pitcher over any other skill set. That will shine through in the end, and it hasn't. And this year we're seeing it now for various reasons that it's there it is again. It doesn't work. It just doesn't.
We should get a shirt. 2021 Yankees. It doesn't work.
Yep, I agree. Let's make them. Maybe we can get Marty to get on.
Yeah, I'll get in touch with him. I'll get
on his horn. What I will say more than that, and this is what I guess kind of stinks, is if you had a team that had Stanton and Judge surrounded with high quality players, they'd probably be one of the most formidable teams of baseball. A team like the Red Sox that was built with Aaron Judge and Giancarlo Stanton maybe replacing JD Martinez and another one of their outfielders, Verdugo, is probably destroying teams right now.
Yeah.
But because the Yankees are so weak elsewhere, because every other part of their lineup is hideous, instead you just have a great player in Judge and an above average player in Stanton, a former MVP, who just look pathetic some nights and have no ability to do it. Stanton gets on base with walks multiple times a game and they never score. Judge gets base hit after base hit and hits homers, but they're always solo shots because he's batting 2 and nobody else really can get on base. Or if DJ does, that's all it. And nobody in the bottom of the lineup does. So when the lineup turns over, you have nothing. So it is brutal and it's hard to see. But at the risk of getting super repetitive, I'm going to move us along here inside the pod and tell everybody who's listening here, we have a new segment for you, some new features. We're going to call it OLIP Mailbox. Just today, we set up a little bit of a voicemail for you. So if you listen to the pod, you want to get involved, you want to give us your thoughts, we're welcome to hear them. We have no problems with what you want to share. It could be about E-Ray's dating life, or it could be about the New York Yankees. So, whatever it is. But the number to call in. Yes. The number to call, you did go out on that date and not watch the Yankees with that girl. And at this point, that probably was a better life decision, right?
I did. Yeah.
That said, the number to call in, if you want to leave us a voicemail or shoot us a text message, it works both ways, is 646-481-9228. So that number again is 646-481-9228. It's as simple as this. You call the number up or you text the number. You can text us a message. We'll read it live on the pod each week, or we'll play your voicemails and we'll see if we got it. We just set this up today and we already have one. So we're going to hear what one of our valuable listeners has to say about the New York Yankees. Let's get down to it.
Hey guys, this is Anthony chiming in with my opinion on the 2021 Yankees, and that opinion is that this team is just simply bad. Their roster is poorly constructed. They're too right-handed. They employ genuinely one of the worst baseball players in the game the last few years in Rougned Odor because he is free. They're terrible at base running, and their core has pretty much regressed ever since 2017. Gleyber Torres has regressed horrifically. There just isn't enough depth on the team. They don't have a great bench. And I think that, this has been a long time coming, and it would not shock me if this is a team that just doesn't get any better. And I think that they should pivot at the deadline and sell off some of their assets and then maybe fire Aaron Boone and Brian Cashman in the offseason. Thanks, guys.
All right. So thank you for Anthony for the call. And I don't want to say we are like exactly on the pulse of the people, but we pretty much are exactly on the pulse of the people because Anthony said everything that we have literally just talked about over the past 45 minutes on this podcast, with really the only exception being the possibility of the New York Yankees pivoting to selling off and then being able to acquire some assets. And Josh, I said this to you last week. If Gary Sanchez continues to hit and the Yankees just don't get back into the playoff spot, he might be one guy who maybe you go out there and you get, but it all comes back to, do you want Brian Cashman getting you prospects if you're going to cut ties with them at the end of the year?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not ready yet to say one way or the other because I do want to see where they are at the All-Star break, because I think by then we'll kind of know. But yeah, I mean, it's a fair point because like if they do decide ultimately at some point in the next few months that they have to completely change course and find a new GM or new president of baseball operations, whatever, then it doesn't make sense to have the current guy in the job make those crucial decisions, whether that's trading prospects away or trading, major league players away for prospects. So it's a tricky situation. They're in a really difficult spot. And I assume that I don't think they'll sell because I don't think that they're going to get to a below 500 point. So I think that they'll probably.
And would Brian Cashman want to sell if this is his swan song?
That's what I was going to say is that, and I think I said that a few weeks ago when we first talked about it, like if he thinks that he has a chance to be fired and lose his job, then he's not going to go out with the current state. He's going to try to make it better, whatever he thinks that is. But I completely understand why people feel this way. Like we're all kind of leaning in the same direction. I think maybe Anthony has accepted it before I have accepted it. But maybe ultimately that is the right decision to make.
Yeah, no, I mean, Anthony's one, can't believe I'm saying this, but he's one of the, because I guess I know him, but he's one of the smartest.
You're not supposed to break kayfabe like that, bro. What are you doing? It's our first caller and you're telling you know the guy, you had him call.
I said I kind of know.
You fully admitted it on air.
Anyway, man, no, my thing is though, if you're, stop shaking your head, not Nick. If you're one of those, because there is positive Yankee fans out there, man. We know some positive.
They're the worst.
They're the worst. It's like, how are you watching this team night in, night out and still think of positive things? It's like unreal. I also want to go out on a limb. I don't know if it's much out on a limb, but I don't, me personally, I don't think Brian Cashman's going anywhere. I think it's time for a change. But I really do think Aaron Boone is done because again, they won't fire him. They just won't re-sign him. They do that. But I really don't think Brian Cashman's going anywhere. That's just my personal opinion. Well, I
do think, just to play off of what you said, I think it would come into kind of what Josh said 2 shows ago, which is if public opinion and the lack of fans in the stands show anything, that's what Steinbrenner will respond to and the Steinbrenners will respond to. So if the media destroys Brian Cashman because of how bad this team is put together, then I do think that, look, even if he does not get fired, they would shift him to something else where they could get something or somebody in there to change the perception of it from him rather than just have him take daggers and then have something worse happen, which is that they lose another season and then the media just shreds them to pieces.
I just think they'll make excuses.
I
Always,
That's what they do at this
I'm
point.
worried about the empty ballpark being blamed on COVID again. Like people
Yes.
still aren't comfortable going out, with big crowds. But if
Fake
you look
news.
around, like if
You're
you
worried
look
about the
in,
fake news system.
if you looked at Fenway Park over the weekend, that place was completely full. And so I don't know.
Then they'll say, well, that only fits, 30,000 people. So,
Right.
Unlike Yankee Stadium, which is a 57,000 person ballpark.
But
they've
I am worried about that though. Like I do believe that ultimately they may decide to spin it as like, well, it's because there was a pandemic, not because
they're going to spin it. Get ready. They're going to. I just don't. Again, like we come back to accountability. I just don't think anyone's accountable in this organization. There will be excuses. Aaron Boone will be let go. That'll be fine. But I don't know. We have to see how bad the season gets, to be honest. I think it's not early because they're done for the playoffs, but I'm saying it's early right now. We have to see how bad it gets. Will they sell? Will they buy? Whatever. I don't know.
I think they will buy. I think that's safe to say.
What are they going to buy with their $2?
But that's where the question is. Cashman will find a way to get people at the deadline. It might not be who we want. It might not be Ketel Marte. It might not be Starling Marte, but it will be somebody. It'll be like what it was with Jay Happ when they couldn't really go get a big-time ace pitcher. So instead, they just went and got Jay Happ because he was supposed to be good against the Red Sox. He'll sell or he'll buy to get it because I don't think he can afford to not do that. But the question will become, will it matter? And if it doesn't matter and he doesn't get fired, then that's what I said earlier. Then for once, the Yankees have to do what they did in, 2013, 2014, or what they did in 2009 and open, the pocketbook, open your purse strings, spend money, and get this team to where it needs to be with personnel by covering up your mistakes with the one advantage you have over the Rays, which is giving money to anybody you want.
There's nothing else that needs to be said.
Yeah.
The only thing that needs to be said is Kyle Schwarber just hit his 13th home run in his last 10 games.
Guy that could have signed him and Michael Brantley.
He's a lefty.
He's a lefty. I know he got two. We knew he wasn't going to sign. Well, they probably loved Schwarber. Castles always loved him, but they weren't going to give him. What does he make? $10 million. That was like not going to happen.
I also did see a stat that somebody said that Schwarber's recent resurgence kind of coincides with the fact that due to the lack of sticky stuff, a lot more fastballs don't have the same spin rate and therefore are easier to hit in the top of the zone. So it is possible he's benefiting at least a little bit from that, but also he doesn't play for the Yankees, so he doesn't have a dog shit approach with the organization. So, it might be that, might be something else. He'd probably be like a 160 hitter here with like 5 home runs if he was on the Yankees.
I just want to say two points. One is that over the weekend on Saturday in the Saturday game against the Sox, it was the bottom of the second. Bobby Dahlbeck hit a fly ball to first base in foul territory that Luke Voigt caught, but he kind of had to turn around to make the play. And Rafael Devers tagged up from third to score. So he scored on a foul ball to first base. And that play kind of broke me. And the reason why is because it kind of just really, that was when I not gave up, but that was when I realized that the Yankees could never do something like that because they just don't have that type of skill set to be able to, like, they don't have the athleticism to make a play that way. And they don't think to make a play that way because they're always afraid of, pushing it a little too far because they think the next guy who comes up will get the big hit. So they don't want to like take the extra base sort of thing. And I'm thinking to myself, like, that's the baseball play that the Yankees miss, that we don't see because they're not built that way. So that play to me kind of just encapsulates everything. It encapsulates all the issues, right? Like, of course that would happen to them. Of course, that's something that they could never do to somebody else. And the reason why is because of how the team has been constructed and the type of players that they have, the skill sets that those players have. And so the other thing is that it's a little dramatic, and I don't think it's quite there yet, but I kind of get like Atlanta Falcons vibes from the Yankees as far as like they have gone deep into the playoffs and experienced such heartbreak that now that they're irreversibly broken.
And for them, it might have been the DJ home run. That home run where you tie it up late in Game 6, and then the next inning, Chapman gives up the bomb to Altuve, and that's the walk up. Because from that point on, they signed Cole, but outside of that, it's like they were mediocre last year. COVID shortened the season. Last year's playoffs, they were screwed, and now this year it's like they're healthy, but nobody can hit anymore, and the core is, all screwed up, and that's the way that it is.
And
right?
they never come through in a big moment. They get called to rise to the occasion and they don't. And
continually.
And that's sort of become the trait, like the underlining trait of the entire team, from manager all the way down to the 26th man on the roster. That's just what it is.
I agree. Absolutely. So Josh has given out Pop of the Week the last 2 weeks. I don't know which one of you want to do it this week.
He can do it.
I guess you guys can fight over who it is. E-Ray, you want to reclaim Pop of the Week?
Yes.
Is there a Pop of the Week?
Yeah, I guess I'll give it to DJ LeMahieu. He's been hitting pretty well. And he hit
anything else?
No, that's really it. That's really all.
E-Ray's getting all shy on us.
I'm not shy. I'm just perturbed.
A great word.
See, I can be smart. To all the fans out there, I'm not stupid.
See, there we go. We love that. As far as the Yankees' upcoming schedule, we actually get to see the Mets for the first time this season, which is
they're going to sweep
over
us.
4th of July weekend. Yep, they play the Angels right now. I can actually look at my TV, which is in a Taco Bell commercial, so I guess I can't look at my TV right now to see what the actual score is. But the Yankees are up. They were tied 2-2 the last I checked going into this game. So,
wait, did you guys see who? Did you see Dylan Bundy puked on the mound? Apparently,
I did not.
What? I saw they took him out. I thought he just was hurt. I missed that.
No, he puked his brain out on the mound.
The video is the video of it.
I think there's video. Yeah.
All right, so we might see.
They have reaction from DJ LeMahieu and they have reaction from Kevin Durant.
Wow! Wow!
Michael King struck out Ohtani. How about that?
See, there you go. Kevin Durant is at the game. Anyway, the Yankees play the Angels. Ohtani pitches Wednesday. Should be interesting and exciting. And we'll see what happens with that. And then the Mets this weekend will also be a lit time. And don't go to the games at the stadium. We don't want to give the Yankees their the money of our hard-earned paychecks. So stay home. Watch on TV, or don't. Ruin Yes Network's ratings too, because the only way that this team is going to realize that we hate their guts is by us actually showing that we hate their guts. That means you, E-Ray. Stop going to games and stop watching on TV.
I've been to one game with you.
That's true. No, I agree. Absolutely.
Yankee game. I'll go somewhere else. I'll go give Philly my money in Baltimore, but I won't give.
Not Yankee Stadium.
I still haven't gotten a Jeter Jamboree, by the way.
Yep. Well, that's sad.
You'll be waiting a little while longer for that, I think.
Absolutely. Before we go, any final words?
I'm interested to see Ohtani play. I mean, I'm not really excited to watch the Yankees this year, but it'll be.
He already had a homer.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to watch him the next few days and watch him pitch and hit, and he'll probably.
That we imagine how much different the Yankees would have been if that winner they got Ohtani instead of Giancarlo Stanton.
A lot of things would be different.
Yeah, and I'm interested to see how the Yankees teases this week. Whether it's win 2 out of 3 against the Angels, sweep the Angels, maybe lose all 3, win all.
They have
4 games. It's 4 games.
Oh, it's 4. You see, I don't even know. That's how tuned out I am now. But yeah, I don't know, man. I got nothing. Just continue to drain me.
Knowing them, they'll win 3 out of 4 versus the Angels and then get swept by the Mets. And then we'll all the idiot Yankee fans will say, see, they're back after sweeping 3 out of 4 from LAA and then getting clowned by DeGrom and everybody else. Is it Citi Field or Yankee Stadium this weekend?
Yankee
Stadium. Is it split?
Yankee Stadium. So
it's not the split one? I have no idea about this. as you can tell.
See, absolutely. All right, that's going to do it for us on this episode of Our Little Yankees podcast. As always, you can follow us and subscribe to us wherever you listen to podcasts. That includes Spotify, that includes Apple Podcasts, that includes TuneIn and SoundCloud. Make sure you hit subscribe, give us a 5-star rating if you like our product, as well as give us a few reviews too. We could always handle that. And I mentioned before, every episode of Our Little Yankees podcast, you can now call in or text us your thoughts on the Yankees, thoughts on how we're doing. We'll share it live on air. Call us at 646-481-9228. You can also watch us on YouTube. We post the videos each and every week at Our Little Yankees podcast on YouTube. And we're on Twitter at Our Little Yanks Pod. Give us a follow there and interact with us all over social media. For Josh Levin, Ray Sepulveda, I'm Julian Coltree. That's going to do it for us, folks. We'll see you next time.